everything. You're dealing with the data and taking and coming up with insights from that data. You're also dealing with creating that content, with experimenting a little bit. And I think back in the day, well, not even back in the day, just like 10 years ago, influencer marketing and the creator space was a little bit more experimental, whereas nowadays it's a lot more mainstream. Nowadays, it's honestly just, it's a cemented part of the marketing mix, whereas in the past, it was kind of like you testing out this thing, you don't know how it's going to go. And I love the way this ends off, a justifier of ROI. So I think there's a lot of companies that see marketing as a whole as a cost center. I know a previous employer of mine did. Well, that's literally what they used to say. And I think so often we have to really understand that as content creators, the marketers and agencies and brands that we work with, the end of the day, need to make a return on that investment. And I think like that's what shifts your thinking. And I think you need to be honest with yourself. Do you feel like you're providing them with an ROI? I mean, if you're briefed with a campaign, where do you add that value? And where do they get that return on investment from working with you? So I think that's an important perspective and shift that we need to have in the space as well. Awesome. So just looking at marketing as a whole, because there's a lot of different sides to it. I would say influencer marketing fits in terms of the public relations, digital marketing, and social media marketing side. I think it essentially it forms part of all of those different sides, but also a little bit in terms of market research as well, because as a content creator or influencer, you're also a consumer. So very often, especially with like press drops and PR campaigns, you often also are kind of given that opportunity to give your feedback on something. So essentially, you also form part of that. So yeah, that's essentially where it fits into the marketing mix, as well as e-commerce. I think influencer marketing and the creator space fits into all of them essentially. Because also you have a lot of campaigns that are to sell a product, and that's where you come in with the e-commerce side. So influencer marketing is a part of a lot of different processes and a lot of different spaces in the marketing mix. Awesome. Okay, so when we look from a marketing perspective, when we look at our advertising efforts, we look at it in three different categories: essentially earned media, and paid media. So starting off with earned media, that's pretty much self-explanatory. Those are the platforms that are the brand's platforms that the brand owns. So essentially, that's things like their website, their social pages. I mean, makes a lot of sense. Earned media is a little bit different. Earned media is when you get press coverage, for example, something good that you did or whatever it is, but that you didn't pay for. So oftentimes influencer marketing or content creation can fit under earned media. That's more so when, as a creator and influencer, you create content for a brand in which you weren't paid to do, in which you're sharing a recommendation that fits under, or doing a review, but you weren't paid to do that review, that fits under earned media. And then, of course, paid is very self-explanatory. So you understand if there is a monetary exchange, that falls under paid media. Essentially, the brand paid you to give them that coverage. So that fits under paid media. Okay, so the social media and content creator space, why is that super valuable to marketers? Now, when I look at it, I look at two sides of it. And I think a really important side of it for me is the fact that as marketers, essentially, we buy attention in a way. It sounds weird to say it, but attention is a commodity. Okay, attention is a commodity. We often spend a lot of money to get people's attention, whether that's billboards or TV or even in the creator space. It's the same thing. So I think that's where really the creator economy has grown a lot, is when you consider the fact that, especially since COVID, people's attention is essentially on social media. People are on their phones. And that's why it is so valuable to us. So there's two sides to it. And the one side of it is we go there because we know that that's where there's a lot of reach. As a creator, you have built a following, you have a lot of reach, but also the fact that the storytelling that comes in. So, okay, cool, we get people's attention. What are we doing with that attention? So that's where the second part comes in. And as creators, you're creating authentic content that resonates with your audience. So that's essentially where that part comes in. Now, why I'm also going through all of this, essentially from the beginning and from a marketing perspective, is it's often as creators, I think it's difficult to understand where you're adding value in the marketing mix, and also for you to actually vouch for why you should be, why a brand should work with you. So I think having this background does help you really vouch for yourself, essentially. So going on from that, so yeah, influencers and creators are modern day magazines, billboards, celebrities. They've essentially replaced a lot of the traditional media channels. Some of those channels still do exist. I mean, they are still magazines. It's just that a lot of the spend is not on that anymore. And a lot of that spend has gone to influencer marketing and to content creators. And this is why you need to treat your personal brand like a media business. Because essentially, the big media companies that own the billboards, that own the magazines, as a creator, you also have that. Like, you have a commodity and you have a brand that's as valuable as them, actually. So I think that needs to be the shift in thinking, because oftentimes as creators, maybe you don't have a media kit, you're just kind of winging it. And I can tell you, like, the biggest radio stations and TV channels, they don't just wing it. When a potential client asks for a media kit, they can provide it right away. So I think it's super important to actually have that, have your media kit, have your rate card. Contact details need to be easily accessible. It's simple things like that that actually do set you up for success. And then another part of it is also the fact that as a creator, you are essentially production house, your photographer, your graphic designer, producer, things that brands spend a lot of money on. And it's something you need to shift your thinking in, because once you think of yourself not just as a content creator, I do a little social media content creation on the side, but like actually what I do is production. You start taking that a lot more seriously, and I think that shift in thinking is what we need in the creator economy. And I think a lot of creators don't actually understand the amount of value that you're adding to a brand. And that's why brands can take advantage of creators, because you as a creator don't realize this is actually what I'm worth. So that's something that's important to take into account. Now, I know this slide looks highly confusing. So essentially, we're going to be talking about like one of my favorite things in marketing, because it's really like it's said all the time, but we always look at the funnel, the marketing funnel. So I should have actually put a picture of like an actual funnel for this to make more sense. But essentially think of it as like an upside down triangle. Now that's self-explanatory. We all know about the marketing funnel. So like, how is it relevant now? So essentially, if you're looking at the top part of your marketing funnel, your brand awareness, I think, well, why is it relevant? You do need to understand when you are briefed on a campaign or content, and even this is from both sides, like as a marketer, when you are trying to put together an influencer campaign, or as an influencer, when you're briefed on a campaign, the first thing you kind of need to do is ascertain, where does this campaign fit into the marketing funnel? Are we talking, is this a brand awareness campaign? Are we looking at something that's more like audience nurturing, engagement, or something to do with conversions? So the reason why you need to understand this, because as a marketer, you need to come up with metrics that are relevant to your campaign. Very often, I think, well, I hope it's changing in the space, but I think earlier in the space, marketers used a lot of fluff metrics. So you judge a campaign's success by the number of impressions a creator got. And if the actual goal of the campaign, if it wasn't about brand awareness, if those impressions, if there wasn't like a reason that tied into something deeper as to why impressions was your key metric, then you're not actually setting yourself up for success. And this is something that I've realized, because very often we use the same metrics. We just say, okay, we're looking for the greatest, literally the greatest impressions. Whereas that might not actually be the best judge of whether a campaign was a success. So essentially, there are a lot of different metrics that are relevant to where the campaign is in the marketing funnel. If you're looking at a brand awareness campaign, yes, reach is one of them, but other metrics that you can use, you can look at things like follower growth, the amount of UGC that's created, and then yeah, just in terms of like the number of creator posts you get, the creators that are involved. There's so many other things to look at rather than just, okay, we reached this many people, it was a success or it was a failure. Yes, we might have reached this many people, but actually now there's a lot of UGC. I mean, on TikTok, people can stitch videos. Let's just say you might not think you'd reached as many people as you could, but then you had a lot of people that actually did stitch your video. That's actually very valuable. Like, you're getting a lot of UGC credits. So I think that's important to realize where something falls under, from both sides, from the marketer and from the creator. So, okay, brand awareness. The next one is audience nurturing. We know this as engagement campaigns. So the key metrics you can use are things like engagement rate, likes to comments ratio, quality of engagement, because it's not always just about the numbers. Quality of engagements are important, and then follower growth. And then it lists the different type of content that's relevant to that. So engagement campaigns are more often not really unboxing content, but perhaps it's a competition. Perhaps it's like a how-to, or a creator speaking to frequently asked questions. And then when we look at conversions are things like link clicks, subscriptions, and the type of content is like maybe a creator does a product review, and then leads the consumer to the website to purchase it. That would fall under conversions. Now, a lot of brands don't always realize that there's a reason why there's a whole entire funnel, and conversions are the bottom of the funnel, which is good because conversions are, yes, conversions you can measure a little bit more easily. You can measure the ROI, which is great because you can see, okay, if we're getting how many purchases, okay, we spent this much on creators, then it's a success. But there's a reason the funnel looks like this. And very often, you actually do need to spend a lot of your budget on that awareness phase, on that audience nurturing, and then take them down to conversions. So a brand that will say, okay, we have 100,000 Rand for influencer marketing campaign, and then they just do a conversion campaign. It's not always the best idea. I mean, we all have different perspectives, but for me personally, I don't think that's the best idea. I think there's a reason why we have a funnel, and there's a reason why the top layer, the brand awareness, is about reaching the most people, and then we go down, and then we go down. So we need to reach them first before we just try to sell them something. So this is something, as a marketer, as a creator, from both sides, it's something to consider when it comes to campaigns, and just to think about a little bit, like, what is your perspective on it as well. And also in terms of, I mean, something like metrics is really important because that's how you measure the success of a campaign. So I think that's something to definitely keep in mind, and that's why I spent a lot of time on this slide. Like, this is for me just like the holy grail. Amazing. So some of our key takeaways is understanding where you fit into the marketing mix, understanding the KPIs of a campaign. So for example, if you are briefed on a campaign and you don't know what the key performance indicators are, you are not setting yourself up for success. Maybe you are going to approach it in a way that's like mass reach, you're reaching the most people. But in the marketers and brands perspective, they're trying to get conversions. So it's very important that as a creator, you clarify what the KPI for that campaign is, from your campaign manager or whoever's briefed you, because in the creative industry, in agencies, we do everything according to brief. So as a content creator, you need to also, and for us to put together whatever it is, a strategy or whatever, we need to know what the objectives are for the brand. So you need to also know what the objectives are. And I promise you, it'll change the game, because all of a sudden you don't need to, like, you don't need to just vouch for yourself, but you can thrive in the metrics that matter. Because sometimes if you don't understand what the marketer is trying to gain, let's just say they're trying to get awareness, but you approach it in a way that's going to get a lot of engagement, a lot of interaction, they might not necessarily gauge that as success. Whereas you, like, for you, it's amazing because you know, wow, this did really well. So many people are like engaging, are recreating their own ones, but that wasn't actually the intention of the campaign. So it's very important to understand that. And then lastly, the fact that you're doing the job of production houses and magazines, which can be something to keep in mind when pricing yourself as well. Amazing. So now looking at some trends in the creator economy. So this one I'll kind of just touch on a few different things. So essentially, when I think of the creator economy, or when I first got briefed on this webinar, and I started thinking about it, I realized the creator economy is actually so much bigger than we just assume. Because yes, we work in the social media space, or maybe you don't, but for me, I do. So I immediately think of social media content creation. But actually, the creator economy is massive. The creator economy involves, I mean, there's so many other things here. Like, yes, photo, video, that's social media. We get that. Blogging. I mean, I'm also a blogger. I have my website, so we get that. But then there's things like gaming. I mean, gaming, there's so many Twitch streamers and gaming content creators. You're still part of the creator economy. Music, you can be, creating your own, like, mixtapes and songs. You're also a creator. Things like live streaming, podcasts, subscription services, creator education. There's so many different things that actually fall part of the creator economy. And it's not just social media. It's not just Facebook, Instagram. There's actually a lot of different parts of it. And I think it's also nice to remind ourselves about that and maybe explore something else. Because yes, maybe you're getting a little bit tired of creating for TikTok, but maybe there's something in you that really likes audio, and maybe you would thrive in podcasts. Because just because you're a content creator in a certain space doesn't mean you can't pivot, and doesn't mean you won't enjoy creating in other spaces as well. Awesome. So that's basically what we went through. Something else I found really interesting quite recently, it was actually before this webinar where I came across it, and it's the fact that nearly 1 in 4 people are contributing to online spaces, which essentially means that they're creators. Because a creator is someone that creates, and whatever that can be podcasts or for social, someone that creates. So just 1 in 4 people. Like, that is a lot of people. I think in the space maybe 10 years ago, there were, a handful of creators. I don't know the stat, maybe like between 1 and 5% of people online were creators. There were very few creators. The rest of us were just observing that content and just consuming that content. But nowadays that's changed. And as a creator, I think it's important to acknowledge that as well. There are so many creators. There are lots and lots of creators. I mean, for an agency like Style ID, creators are also their clients just as much as brands are. Okay, I'm speaking for you guys, but I would assume so, because there's so many creators nowadays. The space has completely changed. It's not like you just have a few select people. Like, there's so many people creating amazing content, and yes, it can be a bit daunting as a creator, because it's more difficult to stand out. But I think as much as there's more people creating, there's more people consuming, and it's perfectly fine. I think there's space for everyone. But it's interesting to start thinking of that. We all started out as just passive consumers, but now we're becoming creators, which is amazing as well, because the barriers to entry are really low. Yeah, this one was just a little bit of fun that I was having. I was looking at like trends from COVID time, and I remember these so well. Oh my word, the Don't Rush challenge, where everyone was like using their makeup brushes and then like switches to the next person. The Dalgona coffee, the Savage dance tutorial, I'm a savage. That was like really cool. And it got me thinking, social media has become a space that has really shaped popular culture and continues to shape popular culture. And I think all of us as creators in the space, we're a part of that. Like, it's really cool to actually think of that. Whereas in the past, for something to become popular, maybe it had to be on TV, or radio. But now we're a part of like these trends that end up absolutely shaping popular culture. I mean, it's 3 years on, and I still remember these so well because these were like a big part of my 2020. So I think it's quite cool to see that and recognize it, and also realize when you are creating that you are a part of like this bigger picture and you literally are shaping popular culture. So this was a cool campaign. I think those of us in Joburg, I think, might have come across the billboards for the TikTok That's How campaign. I think there was one. I saw one in there was one in like Four Ways and at Rosebank Mall, and I thought it was so cool. Like, it's so interesting when you see things from like online platforms do something in like real life. But anyway, so TikTok That's How. It's a campaign that TikTok launched recently. And it essentially promotes TikTok as an educational space, so as a space for tutorials, as a space for things like, yeah, cooking and like recipes, and just a space to learn, which is really interesting. It's interesting because it also shows us as creators the direction that they want to go in and the content that they want to push. So just a tip as a creator, I think it's really cool to also hop on that hashtag. And I mean, it has a support from TikTok, so it's quite interesting. And educational content is always fun. Like, it's always fun to learn new things, and we're the ones teaching that to people. So it's a really cool campaign to hop onto. And then the next trend that I want to look at is the niche creator. Now, this has really thrived with TikTok. Back in the day, when we're all on Instagram, I think a lot of us were just, lifestyle. We're all just lifestyle creators. Um, but that doesn't really fly as well on TikTok. I've realized that TikTok does tend to prioritize niche creators. It makes it easier for them because they know who to push your content to. You are a specific niche. People that like book talk, they'll push your content as someone who creates book reviews, creates within that space, to those people. So I think this is very relevant more recently because of TikTok. And as a creator, I mean, these things change over time. There's a time when it was great to be a lifestyle creator, and I'm not saying it's not good to be one, but there's a good opportunity in niching down nowadays, especially on TikTok. I think the algorithm it's easier for the algorithm to show it to the right people because it knows who those people are. Those people are within that niche. They're always consuming within that niche. So that's also a really interesting trend that I came across. And then another interesting trend is the growth of essentially user generated content creators. So back in the day, I mean, if you're creating content for a brand, essentially you're an influencer, you have somewhat of a following, to reach people. But nowadays, there's an increasing number of people who don't necessarily have the numbers in terms of followers, but who more so just have the skills of content creation. And it's another way that you can monetize where you don't actually need to have whatever 50K followers. But if you create amazing content for a brand, you can easily work with a brand, just not as someone who's creating for their own platform, but you can be creating for the brand. So that's a really cool trend.
Asha,
And
sorry, not to block you off there, but I see a really interesting question in the
okay.
messages from Kendra. Would you advise us to price UGC when we're not requested to post on our feed?
Okay, that is a good question. So I would say when it comes to UGC, something you have to consider when you're pricing for your own feed is that you're also including the work that you put into to build that following. And I think that's something you can't really ignore. So for me, I would generally price lower than if I was posting on my own page because yes, it takes, but I will take into account the fact that it takes a lot to create that content. But I'm not necessarily posting it on my platform where I can consider the fact that it took me so long to build that following. So like if you price for stuff on your page 100%, I would probably quote the brand more like 70 to 80%, because then otherwise, then why doesn't the brand just use someone who will also have that added benefit of reaching their audience, as like a normal influencer campaign, if that makes sense. Because now they're not getting one of the parts of it, which is you posting it. So generally, I price it a little bit lower, not a lot lower. Like, you have to consider that you're also putting a lot of effort into actually creating the content. So I would price it around like 70%, but that differs for different people. But yeah, that's how I would price UGC. Awesome. And yeah, that's a good question, actually. Yeah, it's a very good question. And then I think this is the last trend that I wanted to look at, and it's affiliate marketing. So something that is happening, I don't know if you guys know about it or how well you know about it, but something that is happening increasingly in this industry is the growth of affiliate marketing campaigns. This was something that I would say became a thing overseas a lot earlier than it did now, but it's only really happening now. And you'll increasingly see that campaigns will be offering maybe an affiliate link and a product, and you don't actually get paid for it, but instead you make money based on like a percentage of sales. So it's been around, it's like trickled in every now and then, but it's never really blown up. But something that I can see happening, that I think, as a creator you need to also take into account, is that this is becoming a very important model, in terms of getting paid now. So more often than not, you might not necessarily get paid your rate, but you'll make a percentage of sales. Whether I think it's a good or bad thing, I'm definitely on the fence. I think it makes sense when it's a campaign that's at the bottom of the funnel. 100% makes sense. If this is a conversion campaign, that is what the brand is trying to achieve, I think it makes a lot of sense. Does it make sense in brand awareness campaigns, which is probably where majority of your budget needs to go? I don't agree. I don't think it makes the most sense there. I think it only really makes sense at the bottom of the funnel. Otherwise, you're putting creators at a disadvantage. Because if this campaign is going to lead to brand awareness but not sales, the creator is not going to make those sales and they're not going to make money. So that's just my stance on it. I think it's interesting for creators to think a little bit about that, because that is where that model is becoming increasingly popular. But that's just my perspective on it. Amazing. And then now let's look a little bit into the future. I think it's quite a near future. I know there's another webinar in this series, I think a few weeks later, that is going to speak more to this. So I'm just touching on it. These are just some of the interesting predictions, but also current ways that you can make use of AI and the metaverse. So I'm just going to touch on it for us today. I think it interests me a lot where that space is going. So essentially, AI, artificial intelligence. I mean, everyone's heard of ChatGPT by this point. So I think that's a good starting point for us. And it's something that already exists. It's technology that already exists. As a content creator, let me tell you, there are lots of ways that you can use something like ChatGPT. So examples of the things that you can use it for, and these are actually ways that I use it. So coming up with a script for a video based on a brief, I quite often use it like that. So let's just say I'm given a brief from a brand. I will put that brief into ChatGPT and I'm like, give me a script for a second, 60 seconder on, whatever brand shoes. And then I actually put that brief in. And it's quite interesting because then it gives you like a starting point. Okay, so a script is usually the second thing, but maybe the first thing I could ask it for is ideas on the kind of content, like ideas on a storyline around that. So you could use it for that. You could use it for the actual script if you're going to do a voiceover. That's another way. Coming up with captions for a post, that's another way. But I usually ask it for 10 like 10 options. Then I get inspired by the ones that I like. So I never just like ask it for one and go with that. And then, yeah, as I say, brainstorming ideas for video content. So I will say though, I will never go with anything that says 100% because it's not that great at like obviously using your style and your tone, and you still have to go in and make those changes. But when I'm sitting there with a brief for a video that I need to shoot, and I'm just completely blank on ideas, on stories that I can tell, that is like an absolute gem. So as a creator, those are ways that I currently use it, and I'm sure there's lots of other ways. I mean, if you also use ChatGPT, maybe let me know some of the ways that you use it. It's always interesting to learn from other people because it's such new technology, but there's already so much value that it gives us. I mean, imagine in the next few years, or not even maybe in the next year, when it can do so much more than just text. It's gonna be wow. It's gonna be brilliant. And then the metaverse. So when it comes to influencer marketing in the metaverse, there is not a lot that we like. There's not a lot that's happened at the moment. So when you look at where it's going to go, a lot of it is speculation. There are a few campaigns that have like started overseas. I'll talk a little bit about that. But essentially, it's a space that's very new. But I have no doubt that in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see changes there. So essentially, we're going from Web 2 to Web 3. Web 2 was where social media came in, blogging, all of that. Web 3 is going to take us one step further. It's going to take us into more of the metaverse. It's going to take us into spaces that deal more with, virtual reality, augmented reality. There's so much potential there, and it's exciting, and no one knows what it looks like yet. There's no actual metaverse yet. Um, but you can't ignore it. And I think it's good to kind of arm yourself with what's happening in that space. Because once we have technology, so the problem at the moment, I feel, is that our technology isn't really at the level that it needs to be. Yes, you have the different VR headsets, but like it's not at the point where it's like, wow, this is amazing. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done technically. But once we get there, it would be great to take those opportunities to be one of the first in the space, and I mean, that's the best way to thrive, to be an early adopter. I mean, look at the people who started TikTok in the early days. Those are the people who have like 500K and more now. And then there's the rest of us that started, after COVID, started in the last 2 years. So being an early adopter is really valuable. So this is something to just keep your eye on. And then here are some of the ways or some of the predictions that, um, in terms of the metaverse and how influencer marketing will will actually come out in the space. So one of them is immersive brand collaboration. So things like fully 3D experiences, like an influencer inviting their following to join a virtual workout in the metaverse. So that's one specific way. If you look at platforms like Fortnite, I don't know if anyone's gamers, but like if you look at platforms like Fortnite, when they collaborate with someone, well, it's usually like like a movie or a series or just some characters. They create these immersive experiences, and there's definitely going to be something that happens in the influencer marketing space. And yeah, so that's going to be, I'm quite like excited about that one. Another thing is new monetization structures. So NFTs, that's something that's already passed. I don't know where that's going, but that's something that's already kind of been tested in influencer marketing, especially in terms of like global influencers. So NFTs, non-fungible tokens, like virtual artwork, basically. And essentially in this space, so can't think of an example off the top of my head, but as an influencer, you can sell NFTs to your audience. You can create like limited edition and whatnot. Do I think NFTs are going to be like groundbreaking in the next few years? Not really. I don't think so. But I think it's an interesting way to look at something that's already been done, in the influencer marketing space in the metaverse. Then another thing is virtual influencers. I think like a lot of us probably have come across some already because there are some local brands that are trying virtual influencers. So essentially, the benefit to a brand, because it's a bit of a weird thing. The benefit to a brand is that they can craft a digital presence that reflects its essence, values, and target audience. So they're essentially crafting for them what the perfect influencer is. Is it going to be successful? Are people going to resonate with it? Who knows? But the brand has so much more control compared to us human influencers, because we're also human, and we, as an influencer, you have so much pressure on you, and you can mess up and then you get cancelled, and that won't happen with a virtual influencer. So that's a benefit for brands. And essentially just navigating the new environment as a whole. I mean, there's probably so many other ways that influencer marketing can be used in the metaverse, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. These are just examples of some campaigns in the metaverse, and I can say all of these were within the last year. So they're not influencer marketing campaigns, they're just normal digital marketing, like performance marketing campaigns. But it's cool to see that brands like Game, MTN, and Nedbank have already attempted campaigns that are in the metaverse. I mean, you can research these a little bit more if you want to find out more about it, but it just fascinates me because I'm always like having my eye on when a brand tries something different, in whatever space. It could be in the metaverse, it could be like a game like Roblox or Fortnite or whatever it is. So it's quite cool to see that. I know in some of the global influencers or influencers abroad have, there's this space in the metaverse. I can't remember what it's called, where you can like buy properties and whatnot. Well, there are a few of them, and there's some where like influencers will like buy a property in this virtual space, and then their audiences can like be there, like buy properties around them and stuff. So there's so many different ways that that could go. Awesome. So just looking at some additional insights as I end off, I'll go through these quite quickly, then we can go into questions. So the first one is just to professionalize. I think it's what I tried to emphasize in the beginning, like be easy to work with, honestly. Like have your media kit, have your rate card. It's quite simple, and I think we hear it a lot, but essentially you're working with brands and marketers that have insane KPIs that have to make a return on investment. They're going to be professional, so you need to be. I mean, there's some that aren't, but we just need to do for yourself like what you can, and like be professional in the space, and eventually we will professionalize the creator economy. Next thing is relationships, building relationships. We know in any industry it's super duper important, especially in influencer marketing. I mean, if you have a bad name with one brand, you best believe the marketers are all going to be talking. So that's just, yeah, it's a life thing, but it's very important. Optimizing for search. So we see with a campaign like TikTok, that's how, which is a lot about tutorials and whatnot. Optimizing for search is super important, because with that campaign, TikTok is really trying to essentially have, when someone searches for, how to do a mac and cheese, they want all of that content to pop up. They want to be educational. They want to provide value to people. So optimizing for search is super important to reach new people, and be more discoverable. Another thing is shareability. So I was trying to think of, in terms of algorithms, what is something that just like works really well, or what kind of tip can I give you guys? And I think for me, it's just shareability, because algorithms change, and we know, and they're always changing. But ensuring that your content is shareable, the platforms will always love that, because they want people to share it with their friends. Will then, click on their, like, oh, someone shared this with me on Instagram, and click on it and come online as well. They want people to have screen time. Attention is a currency, and they want that. So shareability will never go out of fashion. So I think it's great to create content that is really shareable. Next one is understanding the brief, point blank. Like it's such a easy thing. It sounds so easy, and it's like, obviously I get it, but no, it's not. Make sure you understand what the KPIs are. Make sure what the brand is trying to achieve. Like that's super important, and it saves you a lot of time down the line. And then another thing is AI tools. As I mentioned, AI is becoming increasingly popular, and we'll say all the good influencer marketing agencies already use AI tools. Things like fake followers and whatnot. I mean, fake followers, people could find that 10 years ago, but now it goes more in depth than that. So I think really understanding that brands and agencies lean a lot on tools and can get a lot of insights. You can't really, you can't mess around anymore. Like you can't lie about things anymore because like we have the data and we have the stats, and it's just, what's the point? Like if something doesn't do well, it doesn't do well. Like we all understand. I mean, brands have wasted lots of money on TV ads that have not done well, so they understand. It's just, it's not worth lying. And then just the last insights I wanted to share. There's always a question of like long form video versus short form video. I'll say lately TikTok's been weird because they've always been pushing short form, but lately I've been seeing all the 3 minute videos come up on my TikTok and I've been watching them. So that's something that's also constantly changing. So don't try to like, okay, only long form or only short form. I think the sweet point is try both. See what works better with your audience. Switch it up every now and then. You never know. I mean, I'm surprised that long form content's been doing better on TikTok. Like, I didn't think that was their intention, but it's interesting to see that it is. And then, should you boost your content? Why the hell not? Like, reach is really bad, and I think oftentimes as creators, it hurts us the most because we're putting the same amount of effort into something that is going to be shown to 500 people as something that's going to be shown to like 20,000 or 30,000 people when it does well. So essentially, if you want to boost your content, boost your content. It's not lying, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, don't waste all your money on boosting, but if that's going to get you the reach that is going to make it worth the effort in creating that content, then it's worth it. And then some KPIs for influencer marketing campaigns. I've explained, I think that slide that I showed you with the marketing funnel, like that is just a gem. If a campaign, depending on where it falls into the funnel, the KPIs need to be completely different. There's no one size fits all. And then lastly, just have fun. Like there's a lot of pressure and there's lots of like crazy things going on, and we all want campaigns, like totally, but just have fun. And when you stop having fun, then maybe just take a step back, reevaluate. Yeah, at the end of the day, it needs to be fun. It needs to be a creative space. Unless you're doing it full time, then it's a job. But even if you're doing it part time, like I keep reminding myself that I'm like, I do this because I enjoy it. Um, and once it loses that, then it's not worth it anymore. So yeah, so that's all. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I think we will go on to the Q&A now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Asha. That was really so insightful. I really enjoyed that. Um, oh, can you guys hear me nicely? I'm getting a
Yes.
notification about my voice. Okay, yeah. And just before we move on to the Q&A, I really love in the trend section when you brought up the ever growing opportunity that's in affiliate marketing, because our next webinar is actually about teaching brands how to integrate affiliate marketing into their marketing mix, and yeah, what opportunities there really are there as it's growing. Okay, yeah, and then just opening the floor, is there anyone who has any questions for Asha? Yeah, Gio.
Hello, afternoon, everyone. Um,
Hello.
I just have a question in terms of, there's a platform called The Salt.
The salt.
Salt, yeah, where you almost like upload your profile, and then the platform or its system almost susses out to say what kind of brands have, pop-up initiatives or whatever that almost cater to the type of profile that you are. Like, let's say, example, you drive an Audi, and Audi has a wide reach to say, any kind of influencer hop on this idea. What do you feel about that kind of marketing as an influencer?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I just lost the last bit, the Audi example.
Yes, I'm saying, let's say you own an Audi, right? Obviously, when you make your
Uh,
profile, you'll say what, maybe you shop at
yes.
Checkers or you have an Audi, so that when Checkers have a campaign that they're running where they are looking for influencers, you almost get a notification to say, okay, hop on this.
Okay, yeah, I think that's actually really cool. Because if you are, I actually know, I know the Salt. So they used to be a different company. There used to be a company called Brand Your Car before, and then they changed to the Salt. So yeah, I think that's great. I think it's good because they have a lot of data on you. So if they are, suggesting you for a certain campaign based on, you already have that car, or you already, say you shop there twice a month. I think that's good. Yeah.
And then in terms of security as an influencer, how much is too much information given away? Because I mean, sometimes you're influencing in your, at your apartment or with your
Mm,
car or, that kind of thing. How much is too much information?
wow. I think that's actually that opens up quite a good conversation. Um, it is scary, and I know, like, with a lot of even parenting influencers, I mean, you're showing your children like just normal, just normal content you're creating it, at home. People can kind of see like where you live. I think when it comes down to it, we shouldn't forget the fact that it is really risky putting out so much of ourselves, and putting up so much about our lives. I think we need to like take into account that it is really risky. There's often when, it's a brand, let's just say you have a car campaign, and then, you're posting about your car, the little things like maybe hiding your number plate, maybe not parking in front of your house, which sucks because like this is our life. Like these are the places we take content, but we also live in a very like dangerous country and a bit of a messed up, time. And social media is really dangerous. So I think we just need to constantly remind ourselves of that, and like not share those like little details. But it's actually a really good point, like, because we put ourselves out there so much, and you're putting yourself in harm's way as well.
Yeah,
um
that is a very good point.
it
And then
is.
just a hand up there from Kendra.
Hi, Asha. Thank you so much for the great class. It was super insightful. I've learned a lot.
No.
Really great to hear your perspective. My question is, so I know that you are a boss babe holistically. Like you have a 9 to 5, you have a blog, which a lot of creators don't have because that's so tedious to maintain. You are on like multiple platforms. My biggest question is, how do you manage to stay so consistent? Because I always see you on my feed, and my biggest thing is, how does she do it? Like, what are your tips for staying on top of things, staying consistent, and avoiding burnout?
Yeah, no, that's ooh. Firstly, thank you. I think a lot of the time it seems like, yeah, it seems easier than it is. No, definitely, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. I think working in the social media space in my 9 to 5, and then also creating content, and as you said, also blogging. It's crazy. Yeah, so just don't sleep and you'll be fine. I'm joking. So I would say my tips for that would be, so each of my different spaces that I work in are actually quite different. So my blog, for example, is very much just travel. So it's very much like, reviews of places, news about hotels, very much just travel. My Instagram, I share a little bit more lifestyle-y stuff. It's a little bit more about like day to day, more lifestyle content. It's still a bit of travel because that's just relevant in my life, but it's also slightly different. LinkedIn is another platform that like very often we don't think of like LinkedIn influencers, but it's also a really valuable platform, guys. Um, so LinkedIn is also different. I get to express my professional side, and so that I may have created and curated a different space. TikTok's a whole other space. TikTok is more the side of me that like I like recommendations. So I like to give people recommendations. It's restaurants, it's hotels. And then obviously my 9 to 5. My 9 to 5 is more performance marketing. It's more, we want to get the best ROI. We want to get the best. So our cost per clicks, we want to like we just want to optimize. It's all about optimizing and performance marketing. So they're all related, but they all like fit in different places. So there is times when maybe I'll be doing a lot more TikTok because I'm just visiting a lot more restaurants and hotels. but I don't necessarily post anything on LinkedIn because I haven't been working very hard, or there are times I focus more on LinkedIn. So I think all of the spaces for me are slightly different, and they tick different boxes for me. So that's kind of what makes it easier. Yes, I'm not 100% consistent, but I'm consistent enough for where it's like healthy for me. I mean, if I like, and I go through phases, let's just say I'll post a ton on TikTok this month, I'll have a month that's more, my blog and LinkedIn, then I go back to TikTok. It's not super consistent, but people will still see it as consistent because it's not like I'm going silent. I don't go silent. I just have times where I focus on different things. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, yeah, everyone, it looks like we are running out of time, but I'm sure if you have any other questions, if you go back to our booking link, you can definitely find Asha's LinkedIn, and maybe she can give you a good consultation. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who came in and attended. Massive thank you to Asha as well. There were really some golden nuggets there. I think we're all taking home quite a lot to think about. And I hope that everyone has an amazing evening. Hopefully, we will see you on the 18th of October, this same time, when we'll be talking to Shannon Fogden about how to integrate affiliate programs.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Look forward to connecting
Thank
with you all.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bye.